In this video, I'm going to explain how to swap your intake boots on your Suzuki Katana. This bike is a 1990 GSX 750F, and I'm going to be explaining every step of how to take everything off and swap them. The first thing I'm going to say is if you don't know how to get to this part of the bike, where essentially you have the gas tank off and the seat off, go to the video I just recently uploaded. It explains how to properly route your, essentially all the hoses. Because if you don't know how to do this, you're definitely going to need to know how to do that. And it also shows exactly how to take all of this off step by step. So after you've gotten your gas tank and seat off, let's go down to the tools real quick and see what we're going to use. We're going to use an impact driver, and we're going to be using a large bit. You do not want to strip this, so actually use the correct bit. And we have 3 different Phillips head screwdrivers, each one different sizes. Use the correct size, you're going to start stripping parts. We're going to have a 10mm socket, and this flathead is essentially just for taking off the gas tank. I used flat like hose clamps right here. All right, time to get started. We're going to be using 2 tools first, big Phillips head and a 10mm socket. Take off these 2 on the other side as well, and this one right here, which is the big Phillips. Now that we have the hose removed over here, we're going to want to remove the carburetors from the intake boots. And to do this, we just want to loosen up all of these on all 4 carburetors all the way up. Keep in mind that if you don't bring it all the way to the bottom, it's going to be harder to pull off. Even if it looks like it's super loose, just loosen it all the way. Now that we have all of the clamps loosened, we're going to grab the carburetors with both hands, one over here, one on the other. Sitting on the bike generally helps, and we're going to try to rotate it up and down until we finally get it out. And we're going to keep the air box attached to the carburetors because it's a huge pain to put it back on. And I'm going to actually make a separate video about how to do that, because you really want to have a perfect air seal, because if you don't, it's not going to idle properly. It's going to go up and down, and it's just, you want to put your air box on right. Now that you got the carburetors off, you're going to want to remove the throttle cable and the clutch cable. I already have the clutch cable removed. A simple trick to it is extend this right here while removing it, and then simply just pull it out, and then pull out this piece very, very delicately. In my case, I can't show you how to remove the throttle cable because the previous owner damaged it, and I essentially broke it because it was damaged. And I had to do a permanent fix to it to where this throttle cable is more or less detached. It still spins freely because it's a kind of weird kind of a fix I made to it, but I'm just not going to remove it because it's an annoying fix. Now that the carburetor is completely gone, you're going to want to remove these oil lines. These oil lines are just a simple Allen key, and be very careful when tightening them as well. They're very delicate. And after you remove the oil line, you're going to want to actually remove the intake parts we've been talking about this whole time. All you have to do is get the impact driver that I have right here and simply remove each one of them. They should be in there pretty hard, so you're going to have to use a hammer and knock them out. But if you're super lucky and they're loose, you might just be able to use a screwdriver. They are also hard to access, but it is possible, I promise. You might also want to consider replacing the O-ring behind each one of these as well, simply because it's an old O-ring, I'd assume, and you don't want an oil leak. You don't want to have to go back in here and fix it just because oil's coming out of it now. Now that you have these off, you got this. And what you're going to want to do with this is essentially check if the rubber is in good quality. There's some ways that you can actually bring back the rubber quality, not back to brand new condition, but a little bit better. I'm not going to go over that because personally, I just put on new ones so that it's just perfect. And you're also going to want to check the back. The back has an O-ring in here. You're just going to want to swap it to a new one. These things get really flat really easily, and as you can see, this one right here, doing absolutely nothing. And you really want to have a good air seal for this. So now you're going to want to put each one back on. It doesn't matter the order you put them in, but as long as this one goes to number 1 and this one goes to number 2 and so on. After that, you're going to want to put this in, and don't forget the O-ring behind there, let alone that one either. So now we bring the carburetor and the airbags back on the bike. We're gonna wanna install the choke first, and then we're gonna also wanna install the throttle cable. For me, I just left the throttle cable on it and put the carbs right here. So for me, I'm not gonna do that. Next, let's put the carburetors into the intake, and we're just gonna wobble them into them. And then after that, we're gonna tighten them. Make sure you put each of these on in a way that it does not interfere with the carburetor and doesn't mess with the air leak. Me, I have this one on the side and the one on the exact opposite side the same way. And then over here, I have this one visible in this direction, and the other one I have it the same way. This order allows me to tighten it all the way without having an air leak or it messing with anything. On a side note, that center one over there can actually get caught on the throttle cable, and if that does happen, you'll actually have the throttle just held wide open, and that's what it's going to sound like when you turn on your bike, a wide open throttle. As you can see, I have mine on pretty tight. These are supposed to be the OEM ones, but I'm not 100% sure you're going to have the same one as I do. Now let's just reconnect this hose right over here. After that, we're going to be putting this back on. First, you're going to want to put this thing on top of it. This is a real hard thing to put on. It can take a few minutes. And then you want to put this on in this direction. Keep in mind, this front part, you want that to go in here. So you're going to actually move this air box later when you're trying to put it on to an exact fitment. I like to line up the back parts first. Keep in mind, this part is actually on top of this part. No need to mess around trying to line anything up. Now that this part is on, you can also notice this isn't exactly lined up. Don't worry about that right now. We're gonna be pushing it in later. But now we're gonna be putting on this screw and tightening the back one. Now we're almost done. All you gotta do is put in this screw over here, one on the other side. Make sure all these lines are held up pretty good. Like I have mine zip tied right over here, just so that it doesn't move around and I have it in a good spot. And then you throw on the gas tank. Don't forget, you have to have these two right here hooked up and the vacuum line over here.